This is Dark Warrior. I'm here to comment on African slavery versus European on African slavery during the slave trade that probably started around the 1600s or probably earlier. Many Nazi bozos feel that because Africans enslaved Africans and Africans helped bring Africans over to the United States, that the Europeans who enslaved them in the United States, the British, are less accountable. Essentially, they feel that Africans are primarily responsible for the slave trade because they conspired with the Europeans to capture black slaves. On the basis of that, that's totally ridiculous because Europeans still enslaved black slaves for 200 years, and the victims of slavery, which were the blacks, are still victims from white slavery. Now let's describe the differences. Let's make one thing clear about the differences between African on African slavery and European on African slavery. The very first difference is that Africans did not enslave Africans because they were black. They enslaved them because they were in separate ethnic groups and separate tribal groups. No different than different European tribes and European nations. So whites exploited this and took the black Africans that were in tribal wars as slaves. However, when Africans enslaved Africans due to tribal war, it was not generational, it was not for a lifetime, and it was not as severe, brutally as severe as when Europeans enslaved Africans, especially in the South. The North was a little different story, but in the South, Europeans enslaved Africans for a lifetime, and it was for generations. And the third most important thing is that it was based on skin colors, based on a racial context. Europeans enslaved black Africans based upon the views that are espoused by white nationalists today. Kabadef has very clearly explained the reasons why blacks were enslaved. Because their intelligence was seen as slightly above the level of apes. Their morals were seen slightly above the level of apes. Their humanity was seen slightly above the level of apes. Dr. Kabadef has explained, based on his racial evolutionary theories, why blacks were enslaved. I think that many white nationalists should take a look at some of his findings. So, based on all that, we can see that there's a very strong difference between African on African slavery and European on African slavery. They were not the same in any category. So, we can also conclude that there's a global pattern of white nations over 600 years subjugating and dominating other races. I just want to clear that up because in my next video I will show global patterns of white nations and white cultures toward non-white cultures. And I do not believe that these patterns are genetic, but I do not understand why white nationalists ignore these patterns and also attribute it to racial determinism, which they have attributed the lower IQ and the higher crime rates of blacks to racial determinism. So I will explain this in my next video. Have a nice day.